discussion. I'm Shelley Emling, the editor of the Girlfriend newsletter and also the moderator of the Girlfriend Book Club. So for December, our nearly 40,000 members of the Girlfriend Book Club chose the book Apples Never Fall as our book club pick. And so I'm just so thrilled and honored that the author of this book, Liane Moriarty, is joining us tonight. But before she comes on, I just have to say that I never, ever post about books on my personal social media accounts, just because I interview a lot of authors and read a lot of books. But this time I had to, because Apples Never Fall really blew me away as one of probably my favorite book of the last couple years at least. So I just loved it. And I hope everybody, if you haven't read it, you will purchase it. It's such a great book. Anyway, so welcome to Liane Moriarty.
Thank you so much, Shelley. What a lovely introduction. Thank you.
I really, I do these quite often, these author interviews each month, but really this is truly my favorite book of the last
years. That's wonderful.
It's so good. So I wanted to start out because before I get to some reader questions, I had a lot of people write in about what they would want to ask you. But can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started writing? I know you used to be in advertising many years ago and you studied business. And then how did you become, such an amazing writer?
Well, when I was a little girl, I used to love to write stories. And in those days, I wrote in a way that I'm always desperately still trying to write now. So I just sit down with complete lack of self-consciousness and just write for the pleasure of writing. And when my father discovered that I liked to write, and also my next sister down, so I'm the eldest of 6, he actually used to commission us to write stories for him. So he gave us our very first publishing deal. So he'd pay $1 for an exercise book filled with words. But then as I got older, I wrote less and less because obviously, as you grow up, you start to have a more critical voice. You start to think, is it any good? I always knew I wanted to have a career that involved some form of writing. So I went into, actually, I was originally thinking of journalism, and then somebody said, try advertising for a year. And I did enjoy advertising, copywriting, because I was always a daddy's girl and he was a self-made businessman. I quite liked that business side of it. I like trying to find a creative way to write something that to promote a product. And I wrote lots of first chapters of books that didn't go any further, a few short stories. The only thing that I actually finished in all those years was a children's book for my sister Nicola. It was for her 10th birthday, so I must have been 25 at the time, and she was actually the main character. And that book has now, many years later, gone on to be published. But that was really the only thing I finished. I got very corporate. I had my big shoulder pads in the 80s. This is going on even further. But then I got the call that my sister Jackie, so both of us had wanted to be writers, and she called to say that her book, Feeling Sorry for Celia, had been accepted for publication.
Was she your younger sister or older sister?
Younger. So I'm the eldest, so I was meant to do everything first. I'd done everything else first except for this. So it was pure sibling rivalry that pushed me to finally write my first book, which was 3 Wishes. And I always say, I don't think if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have ever done it. She's very nice and says she thinks I would, but I honestly think I needed that shove.
Yeah. So with Apples Never Fall, and before I get to the reader questions,
I've lost your sound, Shelley.
What?
I've lost your sound.
Oh no! Can you hear me?
No, you're back. You're back. Phew! Okay. Oh, thank goodness! Oh, thank goodness!
So, what was the inspiration behind Apples Never Fall? I'm really curious. To me, it read. I mean, with the 4 sibling main characters, it almost read to me a little bit like Little Women. You know, the 4 siblings. You really got to know each of those 4 siblings. So
Yes.
how did you come up with this idea for Apples Never Fall?
Yes, that's interesting that you say that about Little Women because I originally, when I was writing it, I named the youngest sibling, she was called Amy.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, why does it feel right that she's called Amy? And then I was thinking, it's because of Little Women. So then I flipped her and made her the eldest child
Yeah.
because her name had stuck by then. I couldn't change her name. Um, and so, yeah, as I'm the eldest of six, I'm sure that that's part of it. So, talking about sibling rivalry, the inspiration for the actual premise of the book came from true crime podcasts.
Oh,
So, like Joy in the book, I received some of those fancy wireless headphones and I got into podcasts a little bit later than everybody else. And like many people, I got into true crime podcasts.
mm,
And sadly, there are many cases, there are multiple cases where a woman goes missing and the main person of interest is her husband. And in those cases, I would always think about the children, often they'd be young children, and think how would they feel? Because invariably, this father would be described as a loving father.
right.
And so that's just got me thinking then this premise of how would you feel as an adult if your father was accused of murdering your mother, because it's hard enough to think of your parents as real people,
Right.
let alone as people capable of murder.
Um, so why the tennis theme? And I also wanted to know, do you play tennis?
Yes, so I definitely did not set out to write a book about tennis. So I had that premise, and I had my family, and I knew I wanted multiple siblings because I hadn't actually done that since my very first book,
Right.
since Three Wishes. Um, and I had been thinking to myself, I want my family to have a family business, really for the sake of convenience, because then you've got all your characters in one spot. Because it's always wonderful if you can keep them somewhere. I think Jane Austen said something like a village is just the thing. So I'm always trying to find my village, and which is obviously what I did with Nine Perfect Strangers. I sent them all off to a health
Retreat.
resort.
Yeah.
They're all stuck somewhere.
Which I love.
Um, so I thought, okay, I'll have a family business. And I was actually having a tennis lesson because yeah, I do play tennis. I'm not in any way like the Delaney's. It was part of our childhood growing up. So in a very, not in a competitive way, and also not in a, I always feel I need to say this because I think Australia might be a little unique in this regard, in that a lot of working class homes would have a tennis court in the backyard.
Hmm.
So my dad had very much came from a family without much money, but his dad built a tennis court, so there are a lot of big backyards. So everybody played tennis.
Yeah.
So it definitely wasn't a sport for the wealthy. Um, so growing up, if we ever had a family picnic, we'd often try and find somewhere with tennis courts. So we'd have a picnic and then we'd just hire the courts next to us and just have a hit. So it was a very casual, fun part of our lives. And I was actually having a lesson because I was trying to keep up with my son because he's actually getting quite good at tennis. Again, I don't sadly think he'll win Wimbledon one day, but he's just turned 14 and he's way better than me now. So I was trying to be good enough to give him a good enough game. And while I was having this lesson, I thought to myself, I know I'll make this family business. Why don't I make a tennis school? And it was funny the way my mind went because I just thought, oh, good, they'll run a tennis school and that will be in the background. But because I don't plan my books, the writing of them, it all just sort of evolves. And as I was writing, I was thinking, well, I guess if they run a tennis school, then they're really into tennis, clearly. And so maybe they used to play tennis. So, in fact, they're not just a little bit into tennis. Probably if you start a tennis school, you absolutely love tennis. It's a big part of your life. So then I made them competitive players. Then I made all the children players. And then all of a sudden, tennis was driving the story in a way that I hadn't hadn't anticipated. And also because then I had to research. So then I started talking to former players, and then I was really struck by the level of sacrifice that goes into
Right.
a tennis career. And that's what then got me thinking, so what happens if you make all those sacrifices, but then you don't make it, which happens to most people, obviously.
So I don't want to give away the ending of the book, but did you know when you started the book what was going to happen to Joy at the end of the book? Did you already have that plotted out in your head?
No, I absolutely did not know. So all I knew was that Joy was gone and that Stan was the chief suspect. And I didn't know whether he was guilty or innocent for a
Right.
very long way into the book. And I knew that I would have Savannah, who knocks on the door.
Right.
I didn't know how she was involved.
Okay, so I'm going to get to a few reader questions really quick. So you've had is this your 10th or 11th novel?
It's my ninth novel and three
Okay.
children's books.
Okay. So you've had so many big hits. I mean, everybody knows you from Big Little Lies, Nine Perfect Strangers, all your other books. I mean, is there one particular book that you're most proud of, or that one that you, I don't know, cherish more than the others, or is that not a proper question to ask?
No, I always think that's an interesting question. But I have to say, I always feel like I want my most recent book to be people's favorite, and that's the one that I feel closest to at the moment. So even last night I was thinking about something to do. I saw somebody talking about marriage, and I was thinking I should have Joy would think that. Those characters are still in
Right.
my mind, and I'm still thinking of things and still almost wishing I could keep writing it. And I did take a little longer with this book, and I think it's my best book. So I
Really?
yeah, I do feel I felt that, and I loved writing this book. It actually, for some reason, brought back the memories of writing my very first book. Maybe because I was writing about a family again.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
I was
yeah,
going to ask you if you based any of these four siblings on your own siblings.
not really. I know with my first novel is about three sisters, and I can remember one of my sisters saying, "This one's you, this one's me, and this one's another sister." But this one, I think you use up a lot of all your own material in your first novel, but these are quite different.
So before I get to the reader questions, I did want to ask you, did you have a favorite scene in this book that you wrote? Because like for me, when I read it, I love the Father's Day lunch scene. So I just wonder from your point of view, was there a scene that you just loved writing more than any of the other scenes or
Yeah, I
chapter?
did. No, I'm so glad you say that because I really enjoyed writing the Father's Day lunch too.
Because
So
it
I
started out so nice and then it just
would.
disintegrated.
And also it's great fun because you have all your characters of the siblings doing different things,
Right.
and then finally there's a reason to bring them all together. So it's wonderful when you've got them all around a table and you can make them all work.
All right. So from readers. Okay. I asked you about the ending. The title of the book. A lot of people are asking about the title of the book, Apples Never Fall. Was that your original title, or did that go through did you brainstorm that a lot, or was that the original idea you had for the title?
Normally when I'm writing, I like to have a title at the top when I open my document. And with this one, I was calling it for a long time, I was calling it Backspin.
Yeah.
So something, I had this idea about the tennis ball, and something to, and I kept coming up with different tennis sort of ideas for the title. But then Apples Never Fall came to me. And also I had that scene in the beginning with the apples spilled onto the grass, and then apples sort of became a thing. And so then Apples Never Fall stuck for me. But then, of course, I have to convince my editors. So there was a lot of trepidation because I've had other titles rejected. So, for example, Big Little Lies was meant to be called Sticks and Stones.
Really?
Yeah, and I was really stuck on that title.
Wow.
But luckily they all loved Apples Never Fall.
That's great. And a lot of people are asking, like, when you've had, so many successes, and Big Little Lies was such a popular HBO series here in the States, as Nine Perfect Strangers, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a moment when you like caught your breath and or thought, wow, I've really made it, like I am a big deal?
I know, I would never think I'm a
Well,
oh,
you
you
are.
know what? You know what? There was one moment when Pink, the singer Pink,
Yeah.
she put on Instagram that she was reading What Alice Forgot. And I do remember my son, he had been never particularly impressed by anything before and would often say, well, you're not exactly J.K. Rowling. You're not, we're not living in a castle, you haven't sold as many as Harry Potter. But when he saw that Pink had read it, he said, okay, Mum, so this is next level now. So just calm down and don't take yourself too seriously and keep writing. So I do always remember that moment.
That's great. So, what is your writing process like? Do you get up every morning at a certain time and write a certain number of hours each day, or how does that work?
I do love it when other authors talk about a ritual that they have, where they get up at a particular time and they do this and then they walk for so long. I honestly don't have anything in particular except that I must have coffee um, to start my day.
Yeah.
So I'll show you some props. I do, if I can't write, and I do often start when I'm at the beginning of a book, I have this egg timer that a girlfriend gave me, and often I will use that. I think it goes for 30 minutes, and I'll say you must write without doing anything for that time.
Right.
So that often gets me into it. The other tiny ritual I have is I have a program that turns off the internet called Freedom. And I've actually seen that in other authors' acknowledgements saying thank you to Freedom because I wouldn't have been able to write this book without it. And so that, in a way, it feels like it's programming me to write because I know, okay, no internet access for this amount of time.
So, a lot of our readers and book club members are asking because they know the TV series so well. I mean, what was it like, when Big Little Lies was picked up with Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman, and then Nine Perfect Strangers? I mean, was that were you a little bit starstruck, or were they kind of starstruck by meeting you, or what was that like to get that picked up for a big series here in the States, which everybody watched literally?
Yeah, I don't think they were starstruck by meeting me. That's nice of you to say. I do.
I bet they
I,
were.
no, I do think. I do remember actually. I remember sending an email to Nicole um, after meeting her and saying something about. And don't know why I wrote this, but I remember telling her that this is as exciting because I used to work for a legal publishing company. Um, and I said, this is as exciting as when we did the video for the capital gains tax reporter, and the lady from the Sultana brand ad said that she'd agree to appear in my corporate video. And I haven't been as excited since then. So I'm sure Nicole then went back to the others and said, we're not going to have much trouble with this one. She's pretty easy to please. But yeah, it all happened. I'd had books optioned before,
Yeah.
and nothing ever came of it. So for me, the very first thing that happened was just meeting Nicole because she came out to Australia to talk to me about optioning it. And I do always remember saying to her, well, I know nothing may come of this, so I'm not getting too excited. And she said, no, if we option it, get excited,
Ah,
because we won't be optioning it just for the sake of it.
that
But to
must
be
have been
honest,
thrilling.
yes, but no, but I still didn't believe her. I just thought, this is just something that they say because mostly what does happen is that what Alice Forgot was optioned way back when my son, who's now 14, was a toddler. And the years have gone on and still
Right.
nothing has happened. So I thought it was just a thrill to meet Nicole, but then there were just then the little steps.
Yeah.
So then I came over to the States and got to to meet Reese, although by then they were filming, so I knew that it was really going to happen.
Well,
And yet there were obviously little moments. So I guess the really special moment was meeting Meryl Streep. That was
yeah.
my
So,
biggest name I can drop.
so I hope your son got to meet Nicole when she came over, right?
Oh yes, they know Nicole now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he knew you were a big deal, is what I'm saying. So with this book, Apples Never Fall, I think I read that the TV rights, film rights have been sold. So what can we expect to see from Apples Never Fall?
It's still very early days. David Heyman, who actually, so I do remember saying this to my son in my attempts to impress him, because he made the Harry Potter films. So I could say he
Very
has
impressive.
often, yeah, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So he's a very successful producer. But that's it. That's all I know for now. So no information yet about script or cast or
Right.
anything.
Oh, I wanted to ask, so some of our book club members asked about you bringing the pandemic into the end of Apples Never Fall. I thought it was fantastic. Why did you decide to do that in this book?
Yeah, I didn't set out to do that. I was writing it, I'd started writing it before the pandemic. So I think when the very first lockdown happened, I was halfway into the book. And I always do set my books right now, because I have no, I'm not good with historical fiction. I always think, even when I do, a scene back in the 80s, and I was there in the 80s, so I should remember how we talked. I get myself too worked up thinking, did we say that? Did we use that language?
Right.
Did we have those, you know, I can remember in The Last Anniversary, my second novel, I had a scene set back in the 1930s, and I had them picking up a pen, and people wrote to me and said, no, they didn't have that pen back then. So I don't like you've got to be so careful. So I do
Yeah.
tend to set right now. And as I was writing the book, was going back and forth um, between those two timelines. And then as I was coming towards the end of the book, I was thinking, oh, well, here we are. This is when the pandemic would hit.
Yeah.
And so I could make it, why not bring it in? And then it actually happened to work for the
Yeah.
ending.
I thought it worked really well. I mean, somebody else asked, do you write, I mean, your characters are so vivid. I mean, we really feel like we know them. Do you write chapters about each character one by one and then bring them together later, or do you just write it from the beginning with everybody blended in, I guess I should say?
I prefer to pretend that I'm writing the book from start to finish, so that and obviously I will have to go back and change earlier things, because I'm not a planner. So as I'm writing, I'm working it out. So, once I knew uh, the ending of Apples Never Fall, I could then go back to earlier chapters and put in red herrings, or
Right.
I would need to change things. So, for example, it became important that Stan didn't own a mobile phone.
Yeah.
But when I was originally writing, or cell phone, when I was originally writing it, he did have one. So he was sitting in bed, scrolling through his phone. So then I had to go back and take his phone off him. So there are things that I need to fix, but I prefer to pretend that I'm an old-fashioned writer on my typewriter with the pile of pages, growing next to me. So I never would jump ahead or go
Right.
out of order.
So people want to know what authors inspire you and what were some of your favorite books of the last few years.
So Anne Tyler is my favorite all-time author, who I always say inspired me to write about ordinary people. So her book, The Accidental Tourist, has siblings in it,
Yeah.
and the siblings are always getting lost. And I can always remember reading that, because my sister and I, even though we're the children of a surveyor, we have no sense of direction.
I don't
And
either.
So, so reading that, I remember thinking, oh, I could have written that. I could have written about, just such an ordinary thing. The fact that each time, our mother, when she gives us directions, writes them in, detail, turn left at the sign, the church, the blah, blah, blah. Um, so it was like she gave me permission
Yeah.
to write in a similar way. Another author who I love, an American author, Mary Lawson.
Mm.
Um, I think her books are just absolutely beautiful. Catherine Heine, I've lost her
Okay.
name. Heine, I think, and she's another Anne Tyler-esque author that I've absolutely loved just recently. Um, and there's another one, Mary Beth. Oh, I should remember. So I'm at the age of brain
No, I
fog.
am too.
But Mary Lawson and Anne
Yeah.
Tyler, I'll say. And I also love Kate Atkinson,
Yeah.
Maggie O'Farrell,
Oh, I
another
love
English
Maggie
author.
O'Farrell. Yeah.
Yeah, Tessa Hadley is an English author I love. So yeah, I could go on and
Yeah.
on.
So we're about ready to have to end this, unfortunately. But was there anything in particular in this book that you found really hard to write about? Was there anything that you really, was it the tennis world, or was there something that you just thought, I don't really know anything about this. This is going to be tough to write, or a particular character's point of view, or I know there was Troy, there was all the different siblings. Was there anything really tough for you to like write about?
Um, I think probably the police investigation, because I wasn't, and I, I think I got away with it, but it's
You
not
did,
really what interests me so much.
right?
Um, and so therefore I was thinking, oh no, she's missing. We're going to have to call the police. I was sort of annoyed that because I didn't really want to have the police involved, and I'm not so, I'm often described as a writer of thrillers, but I'm not really. I don't like to think of myself as that. I don't think that's my strength.
Hmm.
Um, but I luckily do have a good friend who used to be a policeman. So I get on the phone to him, and he says, "So we'll do this and we'll do that," and he takes it very seriously. Um,
Right.
I always remember him with Big Little Lies. I had an ending a particular way, and I was thinking they'd get away with it in Big Little Lies, and then I was talking to him on the phone, and he started yelling. He was saying, "Well, no, I'd be saying to them, they'd be all on the balcony, and I'll be saying, I'm going to charge every one of you." And I suddenly thought, "Oh my God, I'm folding. I will have to change the ending." So he's very good.
Oh, that's great. I mean, yeah, it was such a great book. And just finally, what are you working on now? A new book?
You have nothing. I haven't. I'm ready for ideas. So I've just got things floating about. I've got. I always like to start a new book with a beautiful new notepad. So this is my notepad to start
Oh,
with.
that's
So
lovely.
I just, I just started writing a few things, but that's a very empty notepad at the moment.
And also, The Girlfriend is all about female friendship and the power of female friendship. So I'm just wondering, what do you do for fun with your girlfriends when you're not writing and reading?
I guess we like bellinis, so we're trying different bellinis. Um, I think really well, we've just come out of a long, late
Yeah,
second lockdown here in
right.
Sydney. So for us, going out to lunch is an extraordinary privilege. I'll be going out just this weekend for my 55th birthday to a
Oh, happy
beautiful,
birthday.
thank
Yeah.
you, for a beautiful beachside restaurant, and yeah, that's having a Bellini or
Yeah.
two.
Well, one more thing. I noticed there's a lot about cooking in this book, and Savannah making the brownies and all that. Do you like to cook? Is that something you love to do?
No, I'm not. I'm not a good cook. So I think because I was writing a lot of Apples Never Fall during the pandemic, and I was resenting cooking so much that I think I put all my hatred of cooking into joy, and just lent into it. And it was obviously a fantasy of mine to have a stranger knock on the door and just appear and do all your cooking. And I would have let her in too if she was going to
I
cook
would
dinner for
too.
me.
The fact that she was cooking for them I was like, this is amazing. I would love this.
Yes, yeah.
So thank you so much, Liane Moriarty. The book is Apples Never Fall. If you haven't read it, everybody in the book club, I think, has read it, but encourage your friends and family members to read it or give it as a gift at Christmas. It's one of my, like I said, my favorite book of the last couple of years. So thank you so much for joining us. I just want to say that everybody that's on this call or watching this, that after this is over, we're going to be posting conversation starters about Apples Never Fall, so you can share your opinions about the book. And I just want to remind everybody that in January 18th is our next book club discussion. And our book in January is The World Played Chess. And Robert Dugani is going to be joining us January 18th at 7:30 p.m. So we're really excited about that. And I just want to say happy holidays to everybody. And thank you again to Liane Moriarty, because everybody needs to read this book, Apples Never Fall. Amazing. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining.